Greetings, non-feminist men and women everywhere on Earth. Today is Monday, October 12, 2015. Welcome to episode number 66 of the Vanguard Report. This is the home of transcendental anti-feminism. Transcendental anti-feminism. You see, no matter what ideological label or group label you give to yourself, the central narrative that defines everything else in the resistance and defines the relationship of all parts to the whole within the resistance is the primordial conflict of feminism. What's happening here?
Pardon?
What's that? We are good to go, man.
Yeah,
Looks like Fiedelbogen is muted. Not sure why.
looks like something's happening on his end.
Yep, something must be happening on his end. Fiedelbogen, say something. You
Hello, I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right, there you are.
Why am I hearing myself? Why am I hearing what I just said playing back at me?
I have no idea.
Can you
hear that too?
Do you have another window open? Do you have the episode on YouTube also open?
Oh, let me look. Okay, I'm here now. I'm trying to track down the problem. We're not hearing. Okay, here's what happened. In case anybody is, not up to speed on this, I started doing my introductory monologue as usual, and then suddenly I started hearing my introductory monologue playing in my headphones.
Might be that you had the YouTube actually playing at the same time this was.
That's impossible. I don't see any YouTube happening. All I've got is a Google Hangout window open, as we always have, and I don't know what's going on here.
Are you still hearing it?
Not anymore.
All right.
Okay.
I closed my Firefox browser, and it might have been some gremlin in the Firefox browser that was doing that. I don't know if anybody else heard it, but I sure heard it.
Nope, wasn't on my end.
Oh well, this is man, this sucks. I hate it. Why don't we start over again from the top? Okay.
Go for it.
All right, here we go. Greetings, non-feminist men and women everywhere on Earth. Today is Monday, October 12, 2015. Welcome to episode number 66 of the Vanguard Report. This is the home of transcendental anti-feminism. You see, no matter what ideological label or group label you give to yourself, the central narrative that defines everything else and defines the relationship of all parts to the whole in our big resistance movement is the conflict, the primordial conflict of feminism versus non-feminism. In other words, the conflict of feminism versus everything else. Everything else. It's the feminists against all the rest of us. And we outnumber them on so many levels. Doesn't that make life simple? It's just us versus them. You start by defining yourself as either feminist or not feminist. Simple, yes? From there, you are free to assume any supplementary or ancillary identity you please. But by the end of the day, it all boils down to the one central question. Are you a feminist or are you a non-feminist? A negator of feminism, an abstainer from feminism. Are you one of us, or are you one of those people over there, whom we categorize under the F word. So yes, there is non-feminism, void of feminism, lack of feminism, non-feminism, and then there is non-feminism plus. And it's up to you what the plus part will consist of. You can pile up parameters on top of your simple non-feminist identity clear to the sky. Or you can just go with the simple statement, I am not a feminist, and leave it there. It's your call. Nobody, least of all any feminist, has any right to interrogate you further upon these matters, demanding to know what kind of non-feminist you are. They have no right to do that to you. And if they do that to you, they're out of bounds. They're breaking the rules. And remember, we make the rules. They've been making the rules long enough. Now it's our turn to make the rules and dictate how the game is played. If they want to know more about you, they will need to take the long road of getting to know you without labeling you. You, the solitary individual. They must take the long road of getting to know you without labeling you. Do you want to know where I stand in relation to counter-feminist politics? Talk to me. Listen and believe. Don't study other people if you want to learn about me, because they are not me, and I am not them. I grant you that non-feminist is a label, all right? But it is a very weak label, and that is on purpose. That is for a reason. It gives you elbow room for self-definition. But because it is so inherently nondescript, it is inherently non-brandable, unlike certain other monikers and acronyms that we know in this line of work. Non-feminist defies stereotypification because it is so universal, so inclusive. Non-feminist does not evoke any particular configuration of feeling tones or mental images. In fact, it thwarts that entire process of formation in the first place. It is slippery and Teflon coated, or in the language of rhetorical discipline, it offers no grappling points. So, stand up and say it quietly but firmly. I am not a feminist. And understand that you are not bound to explain yourself any further than that. And anybody, feminist or non-feminist, who tries to interrogate you further for the purpose of branding you or pigeonholing you or file carding you or whatever the hell you want to call it, any person who does that is overstepping. Very well. I am Fiedelbogen. I am your host for this episode of the Vanguard Report, episode 66, along with Nick Redding, man of Canada and true son of the Alberta Prairie. So, Nick, tell us about yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Nick Redding with Men's Rights Edmonton. I've been making a big fuss about being a men's rights activist, anti-feminist, whatever you want to call it, here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I make that not just because I like the sound of my own voice, although I do. I do it to invite other people who agree with me to come and meet me and other people who have come and met me in the past. So if you are one of those people, or if you know one of those people, and you're near Edmonton, Alberta, you can drop me a line through my website, mensrightsedmonton.com, or you can there's a contact us button there, or you can skip that and just send me an email through mensrightsedmonton@gmail.com. You can you can see what I'm up to on my Twitter account. Although I should stipulate that I'm not the only person who uses that. There are other people who have access to the Twitter account, Men's Rights Ed. You can check out what I'm what I'm talking about even more on my YouTube channel, Men's Rights Edmonton. I think that's my ritual plug for the beginning and end of every episode.
Yes, Nick, I think you got it covered there. Anyway, Nick, you recently posted a video on the Men's Rights Edmonton YouTube channel. This was inspired by, certain inopportune acquiescences, you might say, on the part of another YouTuber, namely a young woman known as Shoe on Head. And your video that you've recently posted that we're talking about here seems to have, as we say, kicked over the beehive. Well, certainly it has created a certain hullabaloo. Yeah, I love that word, hullabaloo. It's created a hullabaloo, and I think more than you anticipated, and probably more than I would have anticipated as well. Anyway, I'm guessing that you would like to enlarge upon that theme and share your thoughts on what all went down. So, Nick, what would you like to say about that?
You're right when you say that it turned into something a lot bigger than any of us could have expected. But like in retrospect, it had all of the elements for a giant E-drama. I mean, it wasn't a giant E-drama. Like, it was big.
Oh, no, I've seen bigger.
Yeah, and it quieted down because really, it was a drama that nobody wanted, right? Nobody wanted to have because typically we like Shoe on Head, and she's shown similar friendliness towards us in the past, like going on Honey Badger Radio and stuff. Another element was that a lot, like, people who, I know you don't identify as an MRA, Peter Logan, but I do, and a lot of other people do. And they're tired of hearing, people who are peripherally involved, people like brigaders and things like that, saying that men's rights activists or the men's rights movement are as bad as feminism or feminists.
Excuse me, Nick, as bad as, or perhaps in some way the same as?
Yeah, as feminists. And it's really frustrating that we keep on hearing this from people, and then it always goes the same way.
From people who ought to know better, you would think.
Yeah. Or that MRAs are just another kind of social justice warrior. That I hear a lot.
Oh, I got plenty I could say about that, but go on, man.
And I've hered. I think I'm not sure. I've heard that people say that TJ the Amazing Atheist says that, but he's also done an interview with Robert O'Hara, so I don't know. But when I was in Twitter conversations, Twitter, conversation groups with like GG in Seattle and GG in BC, and I was talking to them. They brought up the whole MRAs are just like feminists, or MRAs are just as bad, or something like that. And I'd say, well, can I get an example? And then they would say, well, are you saying that no one in your group acts terribly? It's like,
okay, yeah. The key phrase here, I think, is your group. When they say your group, they're sticking you in a group. You never, consented to be stuck into a group, but they're already
Yes, I do.
pigeonholing you and branding you in their own minds. You know, and to that I say fuck them. But Nick, go on.
Well, no, I did give my consent when I, set up Men's Rights Edmonton and called myself a men's rights activist, right? And I actually touched on that in my video that I was hesitant to join the men's rights movement, but taking on a label like that is kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like it has consequences. Some of ultimately, I found that championing a movement like that or a group like that was the consequences were beneficial in doing that because
There's an upside and a downside, I think.
Pardon?
I say there's an upside and a downside to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the downside is that maybe some people will act in a way that gets me that I get lumped in with them. But the thing is, like, no MRA has ever shut down a lecture because they didn't like what was being said. Okay.
Or you could say no activated non-feminist.
Well, I could, but I'm saying it depends on that. No MRA has ever done that. No MRA has gotten someone fired over telling a joke, right? No MRA has. I don't know of any MRA who has disabled comments on their YouTube videos. Someone told me that a YouTube user named London Byron did that, but another person told me that he didn't disable comments on any of his MRA videos.
No, well, that's a lesser offense in my book anyway, but yeah, it's good to know.
But it's these are the things that make feminists so reviled, right? Is their totalitarianism, their absolute disallowing of dissent, of other people speaking.
You could circle the earth at the equator with a list of things that feminists do and non-feminists don't do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But people seem somehow justified. They seem somehow justified in saying that we are just like them, because feminists are about women and MRAs are about men.
Well, see, now this is where a guy like me would step in. I who disavow, disown. I don't know if that's the right word because it sounds like I'm condemning it or something. Who does not claim the label quote MRA, who does not claim membership in the men's rights movement. And I could step in here and say, okay, I'm not part of the MRM, and I say this, and I say X, and I don't say Y, and okay, come here and talk to me. That's the kind of role that I have to play. I have the privilege of being the total outsider, the cowboy who rides into town out of nowhere, to kind of set things straight. And one of the problems I see is that people are defining the categories here. Like they say, the movement, your movement, the men's rights movement. Does anybody actually know? Has anybody actually given or offered up a set of absolutely identifying criteria that would set apart the men's rights movement from any other movement, or membership in said movement from membership in any other movement? And to my knowledge, nobody has done that, and I frankly think it can't be done at all. Nick?
Well, that's the thing about a movement is that it's loose, right? It's not an actual group.
It is loose, and I think that's sort of the downside. That gets into the downside is it is loose, and yet there's people out there who want to take that looseness and make it tight, and then that tightness becomes a noose around your neck. If you're ultimately identified with this false construct that they're forcing you into. That's the problem I see, and I'm always thinking of ways to outwit that whole scheme of things.
Well, James, have you ever heard of any kind of definition of the men's rights movement that you would agree to?
Other than what the acronym very obviously says, but which is fine, but it doesn't go very far.
Okay, I guess James is away from his computer right now. He's not one of the hosts anyway.
Oh, no, he's not one of us. James, you're not in the club. Okay.
But, oh, go ahead, James.
Oh no, I'm here. I'm just paying some attention to what's going on. I've not heard much in the way of any alternate definitions.
Not alternate definition, but just a definition, plain and simple, that goes beyond the shallow level of understanding that men's rights activist or men's rights advocate would suggest.
I think it speaks on the face of it.
It speaks on the face of it. Yeah.
I don't see why. I don't see how the definition is confusing or shallow. I mean, not in the way that we use it.
Okay. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's a big tent, and you got to understand that the term MRA and MRM, it came about. I think MRA goes back to the last century, but I know it's been around for a good 12 years, and this is something. It was not planned. It was not thought out. It's just something that grew spontaneously, organically in places like Usenet, and in forums that sprang up back there then in the early days, talking 2003, 2004. People just wanted a shorthand way to talk about themselves. All us guys in this chat room here, on this email list here, and so they just, for convenience, started referring to each other as MRAs, because that was an easy thing that just popped into their head, and it's it's quick to type that out of your keyboard, and then that thing just took on a life of its own, and grew, and has picked up all kinds of connotations, all kinds of baggage that was not necessarily there in the first place, and yet it was the chaos of the early days, the fact that nobody really has no real intellectual pedigree, and nobody really defined it. Due to that, it's that chaos, that chaotic factor, which has caused it to get out of our control, and it's come to mean everything and nothing, and just everybody out there just takes their most undisciplined sense impressions and globs it all together into one little ball of mud and calls that MRM or MRA, and the result being that the semantics surrounding the term is a total train wreck, beyond what the acronym itself very simply intones. Anybody?
Yeah, well, and that bring up something very important there, like people who criticize now that it's not just MRAs criticizing feminism openly. The feminist, the atheism plus crowd has taken to calling anyone who dissents against them an MRA.
Feminists, I've heard feminists, hilarious as it may sound, I've heard feminists calling other feminists MRAs occasionally.
Oh, yeah. Danielle, I read somewhere, I can't remember if it was on Twitter or where, but, or no, it was in one of her articles. Danielle Parati, a local Edmonton feminist, she said that other feminists had called her an MRA when she disagreed with them. It's just become, as you say, like as you said before, people believe a slur in the mind of the men.
It is. I call it a label. Well, it's a stigmatizing label is what it is, and it's effectively, like it or not, let's face it, it is effectively in control, under the control of the feminists now more than any other group.
I don't know about that, and that.
I mean, as far as the common application of meaning.
Yeah, it's really being used in the same capacity as the term nigger lover would have been used a few decades ago.
Or Senator McCarthy saying communist or something.
Yeah, commie, witch, yeah.
Or fascist. That's my favorite example right there. Just calling somebody a fascist. Calling somebody an MRA is about on the same level of intellectual honesty or meaningfulness as calling somebody a fascist or calling somebody a communist or whatever. It's just simply a term of abuse. It's an expletive. It's effectively divorced from any meaning. It's a blank check that anybody can project any kind of fear or hatred into it, and then glom that onto another person, as if it's a stigmatizing label. And it's largely under the control of the feminists because it has become a pejorative label in the minds of a lot of people for different reasons, I might add, feminist and non-feminist alike. And so the feminists use the term MRA or the term MRM as a way to basically divide the non-feminist resistance. Any non-feminist resistance or anti-feminism that might crop up, they use that as a way to divide, as a way to pound a wedge. They distinguish MRAs from anybody else. Basically, they will gum the label MRA onto anybody who is politically effectively speaking up against feminism.
And they do it because it was shown to be effective because the reason that Armored Skeptic said that in the first place, that feminists and MRAs are the same thing, was to distance himself from MRAs because he had been consistently accused of being an MRA for 2 years in his.
If he had been more courageous, he would have just said, "Yeah, I'm an MRA."
Yeah, or I mean, well,
or he could have just said, "No, I'm not an MRA, but don't you?" Well, here I should interject with my own position. My position is to say I do not self-define or label myself as this thing called an MRA, but you will never hear me speak a bad word about MRAs or the MRM. I'm not part of MRA or MRM, but I do not speak ill of MRA or MRM. And in my opinion, that is the course we need to steer.
Yeah, and I mean, if people are going to say that just to get feminists off their back or something like that, then if people are gonna say these careless things, then in my opinion, we should also say no, we're not going to tolerate you shitting on us just to take the heat off of you from feminists.
Well, the funny thing is they don't know it, but they're shitting on themselves as well. Because the word MRA, MRM is used so, shall we say, promiscuously in present-day semantics, that effectively anybody who is trying to speak out against feminism, trying to practice some kind of anti-feminist politics, they start smearing around with wiping the smear rag, the MRA smear rag around. They are shooting themselves in the foot. And if they don't realize that, it is due to their naivety. Their political sophistication, their political awareness is simply not developed to the point where they can see what's going on. And this might be the case with this, what was his name, Armored Skeptic. He sounds kind of like a new kid on the block, from what I gather, and maybe his level of political awareness is simply not developed to the point of those of us who, been in this line of work for years.
He's not a new kid on the block. He's got a lot of subscribers actually, but he's in the atheist and skeptic community more than the
right. But I mean, as far as just counter-feminist politics, I think we could effectively describe him as a quote-unquote new kid on the block. He's not that aware of all the Byzantine complexities that are going on here.
No, and that was one of the things that I pointed out in my video. I was saying, like, look, when you say the MRA, when you talk about the men's rights movement, it signals that you don't know what you're talking about.
That is a grammatical barbarity. Yeah, right there. That's a giveaway.
Yeah, and it's not like a major faux pas or anything, but what it does is it indicates you don't know what you're talking about.
It's a signal.
Yeah, and someone. Sometimes I do stick my foot in my mouth on this program here, but I do consider it a valuable thing to know what I'm talking about before I do it, right? And if I am shown to not know what I'm talking about by someone, um, I won't get angry. I like to be corrected. And what happened in this case was Shuan and an armored skeptic. They got really angry that I would come along and say, "Hey, that's not cool what you did. I don't appreciate that." And it was pointed out by Karen and Dr. Randy McCann in their video. Oh, Karen didn't make a video.
By the way, let me interrupt you briefly here. Everybody, look at Q number 1 and Q number 2 on the Q list. These are links to YouTube videos, one of which is Nick's video that we're talking about, and the other one, Q number 2, that is to Dr. Randenbergkam's video on the same subject. And you ought to go and watch both of those if you're not up to speed on this affair. That'll get you up to speed. That and read the comments as well. Anyway, Nick, go on.
Both Karen in the comment section and Dr. Randenbergkam in his video pointed out that I was pretty polite and pretty mild about what I said.
You were very much so.
And it was just like saying, hey, like just standing up for myself in a very not very aggressive way. I mean, I got kind of angry in some points in the video, but it was pretty toned down.
Yeah, I thought you handled it pretty well. I do.
Why, thank you. And they did not handle that well at all. And the thing is, and some other people brought this up in the comment section, that they have, their YouTube channel is like nothing but making fun of people. Right? Like
on both sides of any conflict, would you say?
Well, no, Shuan Head, she makes videos. I mean, she's only made a few videos, and they're almost all making fun of feminists. Armored Skeptic makes videos ripping on religious people, mostly Christian. And he also has another channel called Armored Media where he does movie reviews. But the movie reviews he goes over the good and the bad. But he does what a lot of atheists and skeptics do, and is make videos ripping on religious people and their absurd arguments. For people who just constantly make fun of other people, when someone else comes along and says, "Hey, you've misrepresented my political movement. I don't appreciate that. I don't think that's very cool." Then they did everything but admit wrongdoing. Right? Eventually, they did apologize, and I'm not very satisfied with their apologies because they also, first of all, they continued bitching about. Shuan Head has continued bitching about my the title of my video being clickbait.
What's wrong with making clickbait titles on the internet? I've never figured that out. People act like that's one of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, and that's one of the few things that I would agree with. Who is that guy who interviewed Karen? Anyway, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I know the guy. I can't think of his name either.
The young guy. When he interviewed. When he also interviewed Sargon of Akkad, and Sargon of Akkad brought up clickbait, that was actually this young guy. He said, "Well, wait a second. Like, what's wrong with welcome to media? You want people to pay attention to what you're saying."
No, I can't object to clickbait very much. I mean, person who makes clickbait titles, that person is social media savvy or internet savvy.
Yeah, and I mean, if it was really bad, quote unquote clickbait, it would have been like. If
it was bait and switch clickbait, then I might pose an objection.
Yeah, or Shuan Head viciously viciously slanders the men's rights movement, something like that.
That might be a little out of line, yeah.
I can see where there would have been an objection, but it's like, hey, you, not cool.
Yeah, not cool, bro, not cool.
That's probably the least sensationalist title I can imagine. Yeah. But so there's that, and
mild reproof at best.
In the comment section of my video, Armored Skeptic comes along and he goes, "You want proof? You want an example of an MRA who's just as bad as feminist? Okay, Paul Elam."
Well, yeah. Paul Elam is one person. Paul Elam is a solitary individual. The problem with using that group label is not that you're slandering everybody in the group, but in this case it's worse than that, because it's a group that hasn't even been defined, and you're slandering people who might not even be in that group or might not have placed themselves in that group. It's like a cancer that just keeps spreading and spreading, and it's what the feminists do, and it really, really bothers me to see people who are on our side doing the same thing and falling right into the trap, into the game that the feminists have set up for them.
Well, what bothers me is that Paul Elam gets demonized, and nobody knows. Like, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, he's awful." And you're like, "Okay, well, give me an example. Give me an example of the awful things he's done."
Paul Elam has oodles and oodles of chutzpah and moxie.
Yeah, like he tells it like it is, and he doesn't apologize.
He's a very brash warrior in this realm. But that draws attention, which is something we need, publicity.
Yeah, and when you ask people what he's done wrong, they say, "Oh, well, there's the Bash a Violent Bitch Month article," right? Which over and over again
has been pointed out that it's not what it appears to be. All you got to do is read it in context and see what the hell he's talking about, and suddenly all those horrible accusations against Paul Elam evaporate.
Yeah, and the other one is when he said that he would, if he was on a jury, even if he was on a jury for a rape trial, even if the evidence was overwhelmingly obvious that the defendant was guilty, he would still acquit.
Let me say right here and now that under certain conditions, I would do similar.
It's a position. Yeah, it's a position of. When you look at it in the context.
I mean, the system is crooked to begin with, and you got to be a little bit twisted to untwist what was twisted in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Taking that stance. If the system weren't so incredibly fucked up, if there weren't. If we
live in a normal, sane world, which we don't, then I would be normal and sane, and everything would run smoothly. But that's not how reality works at this point in time.
Yeah, if there weren't massive pushes by, police, government, media, and academia to suspend the fucking burden of proof, then yeah, I would be totally against that stance. I would think that was absolutely insane. But it's a stance of protest, right? To say, well, if you guys are going to make it to railroad every single accused individual or every single person accused of this crime, well, then I'm just going to let every single one go free if I can. Like, fuck you.
That's just the law of karmic adjustment, to coin a phrase.
Yeah, and if they don't want us voting to acquit every single time, then maybe they should try to restore some balance to the scales of justice.
Well, the thing is, I think that they're not able to process this, because if they were able to process this, if they went through the intellectual steps of understanding the problem and understanding the argument that's being put forward here, if they went through all of that and truly assimilated that, truly digested that, they would, in effect, have to give up their worldview. And giving up one's worldview is not something that anybody does easily. So I can understand in a purely human way where they're coming from. And this does not touch upon their inherent sexism and anti-male bigotry and anti-male bias. But it's just the fear that your worldview will be proven incorrect, that you will be showing up as a person who has embraced a monstrous evil, which in this case is the case.
Yeah. Agreed. But bringing it back to what Armored Skeptic said, what makes it even worse is that he didn't even give any examples of what Paul Elam had done so wrong. He just goes, "Okay, you want an example? Here, Paul Elam. There you go." Like
that's a complete evasion. That's not an example. Paul Elam is not an example. Paul Elam is a person, and just throwing a name at somebody doesn't answer anything, doesn't explain anything.
Yeah, yeah, and it's certainly unbecoming of someone with the term skeptic, their moniker.
Well, what puts the real sting in this is that this sort of thing is coming from people who really ought to know better. People from whom we expected better. And that's what really smarts.
Well, and that's the thing is that after in the same 24 hours, like I released my video, and that started off that set off a big shitstorm on Twitter and on YouTube, and then in that after a couple hours later, Dr. Randemerkamp uploaded a video, and in my opinion is an absolute smackdown, not just of the situation.
Excellent video.
Yeah, not just of the situation at hand. Well, not just of this particular local drama, but this is something that we've been hearing.
This is a microcosm, Nick. This is a microcosm.
Yeah, this is something that we've been hearing for a long time. Is that MRAs are just like the feminists, and we're fucking tired of hearing it. And this is from people who think that they're they
don't tell you who or what the MRAs is, and it's subjective, and it varies from one person to the next. Nor do they, for that matter, get down to brass tacks with what is feminism.
Exactly, and actually, like even just before this, because I brought up Hannah Wallen's video response to Brave the World, where she also,
that was a good one too. I recommend it.
Yeah, where Brave the World also, said that feminism and the men's rights movement were she committed the middle ground fallacy, right? And I hate that. I hate that where people go, well, I'm in the middle here, and you're both wrong. Fuck, shut up.
That has nothing saying you're in the middle of something really, and therefore you are right, is one of the stupidest ways of reasoning I can think of. It has really nothing to do with the right or wrong of the subject in question. I mean, it's true that sometimes the middle ground can turn out to be the right position or the best position, but not always.
Yeah.
And assuming a false middle ground when you have not even defined what the extremes are in the first place. I mean, that takes it into a whole other dimension.
Yeah, it is a very shallow way of appearing reasonable.
It's a flippant cliche.
Yeah.
It's a lazy intellectual cop-out and a way to pat yourself on the back and to not really get to grips with the real issues, to not understand the situation, which often takes a bit of intellectual sweat, to arrive at that state of understanding. And I think this is one of those.
And I love the way Dr. Randemerkamp handled it, because when you look at the comment section of his video, right, it was very interactive. He got people to list 3 men's rights issues and 3 feminist issues. Right, he told people to be honest, like really think of the 3 most relevant feminist issues that they're fighting for that you can, and then compare the 2 and tell me if they're the same. And when you look in the comment section, you have a whole bunch of people going, here's my, they're not MRAs, by the way. These are people like that guy T, very well respected, right? Bread and circuses, right? People who are not MRAs, but
they have not specifically said they're MRAs, or they have expressly said they are not MRAs.
I would, you know what? I would bet that guy T and Bread and circuses both have explicitly stated that they are not MRAs. Although I don't know for sure, but if I were to speculate, I would bet $5 that they have both made that clarification.
And I'm not sure, and I can only speculate, but I'll bet they have been called MRAs.
Oh yeah. That's something else I would hypothetically bet $5 on.
Yeah, but for my book, anybody who says I'm not an MRA, that's it. They're not an MRA.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Even if they match the profile in somebody's mind, if they say I reject that label, I do not self-label or self-define in that way, that's it. You know, they are not that thing.
Well, I disagree with that, but we've gotten into this before.
Well, okay.
You know,
Well, we won't go there again right now.
Okay. But you go through the comment section and you have people.
Excuse me, everybody, but we're getting a little bit of a noise factor outside of my window here.
You might, please.
Okay, Nick, you go ahead and talk for a while. I'm going to mute my mic.
Okay. When you go through the comment section of Dr. Randerkam's videos, everybody they're listed like who has some familiarity with the men's rights movement and feminism. They demonstrate their familiarity by giving 3 top issues that both sides or that both groups are concerned with. And in so doing, you can see for yourself that the two are not the same. The two are not just opposite ends of a spectrum, unless you want to consider that spectrum authoritarianism and libertarian. And by doing that, by inviting people to show their understanding, it really highlights that one would only say such a thing out of ignorance. And that's the thing. But anyway, I'm very happy that this all transpired because now that you have all these people like Bread and Circuses and that guy T weighing in on this, there was a big explosion of drama. That whenever those guys hear someone say, "Oh, MRAs and feminists are the same thing," or they're just it's horseshoe theory, then you can bet your ass that. And I keep on bringing up that guy T and Bread and Circuses, but just because they're well known and they're respected as intellectuals, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with them. But they'll say no, they are not the same thing. I am not an MRA, but I can tell you right now that men's rights activists and feminists are not the same fucking thing. And I really did appreciate that even Sargon of Akkad came onto my channel and said, I like almost everybody in this drama here, but I can say that I don't see MRAs acting like that. And I would like that to be put to bed, because there's a whole lot of people who, they're opposed to feminism, and feminists have used the same slander tactics against them as they have MRAs, calling them misogynists, and et cetera, et cetera. And they're tired of feminists too, but they don't want to get lumped in with us because they bought into all the feminist slander, even though the same stuff was used against them. So, I'm glad that this giant drama happened, and it'll make people a little less cavalier when they say that stupid shit. And that's what I have to say about this. Beetle blogging?
Well, it'll make them curate their semantics a little more carefully. Is it noisy? Is it noise coming through right now?
No, it's a very low thing in the background.
Okay, it sounds overwhelming to me.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, oh gosh, Nick, what was the last thing you said before you turned it over to me?
I said that people won't be so cavalier about making this statement, making the middle ground fallacy.
All right, the middle ground fallacy, that's a good point to bring up. That's something everybody ought to have in their intellectual toolbox. In fact, I even put a link there on the Q list to the middle ground fallacy. Let's see, that was Which one was it? Can't seem to find it. Okay, well, there is a link somewhere on the Q list to an article about the middle ground fallacy. Just something you can go, take you about 7 or 8 minutes to read. It's something you ought to know about. Because there's a lot of people out there, as we know, who even, I mean, going beyond the semantics of MRA, MRM, there are people who will say something to the effect of, well, I'm not a feminist, but I have nothing against feminists, and I'm not an anti-feminist, and I got a lot of friends that are feminists, and I think we all just need to get along, and you know, those are the fat ass on the fence people who really don't know what's going on. They think feminism is just something you can get along with, coexist with. I mean, they're just naive, okay? But that's a form of the middle ground fallacy right there. They think that feminism on one side, anti-feminism on the other side. Therefore, the correct enlightened position to take is somewhere in the middle, smack between feminism and anti-feminism. It just shows that they don't have any real significant clue about the nature of the situation. And I have stressed one thing time and time again, and that is you've got to make a decision. Either you're a feminist or you're not a feminist. But once you have made the decision that you're not a feminist, that is like a quantum leap. You're in a separate category. There is no smooth transition from feminist to non-feminist. The disjunction is in the nature of a gap, and you're on one side of the gap or the other. And once you decide you're not a feminist, you can start off on the very mild end of the spectrum, saying, I'm not a feminist. And then the more the feminists begin to attack you, irritate you, offend you, do stupid things, and say stupid things, the more you begin to slide toward the anti end of the spectrum. You work your way up the ladder from being just non to more and more anti. And there really is no middle ground there. We have a feminism problem, or a feminist problem. Feminism is the problem, and our task is to do something about that problem. If not to get rid of feminism, because what would that consist of? Not to get rid of it, but to simply to what shall I say? To neutralize it, to drive it.
The way I put it is seeing feminism fall under the same disrepute as racism.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. Bring about feminism, social death. Basically end the hegemonic status that feminism and the feminist worldview presently enjoy in our civilization. And then feminism will go back to just being another little cult, and they can go door to door like the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Mormon missionaries or what have you. And they should be kicked out of academic departments and universities. Their stranglehold upon various industries, various professions.
Actually, I would like to clarify that. I wouldn't want to ban feminists from teaching positions, right? I would just want.
Well, we'll put some stipulations on the nature of their relationship with academia, certainly.
Well, it would be the same. It would be the same stipulations you could put on anyone of any religion, right? Like if you personally believe that Jesus created the universe 6,000 years ago, that's fine. And if you want to teach science,
I haven't heard of this religion that Jesus created the universe 6,000 years ago. That's a new one.
It's the young Earth creationist.
Okay.
If according to the biblical timeline, the universe was created about 6,000.
Yeah.
But if you want to believe that, that's fine. And if you want to teach a science class, that's fine. The two are not technically mutually exclusive. However, if you use your science class platform to teach that evolution is a hoax and that Jesus created the universe 6,000 years ago,
okay,
there's a bit of a problem there.
There is.
So again, if you're a feminist and you believe all this crazy patriarchy shit, that's fine. And if you want the teaching position, that's fine too. But if you start telling your students that there's a patriarchy and that and that feminism is the solution to the patriarchy, then you're going to be told to keep it in fucking church.
Very much as if you began to preach that there is a Santa Claus on the north or south end of the flat Earth.
I'll say that kindergarten teachers get away with that one all the time.
Yes, but their range and their reach is limited. Okay, they're not teaching that at the level of the United Nations. They're not in high postgraduate positions of power teaching that. They're not in the media teaching that, and they have not successfully hoodwinked just huge masses of people. Okay, so fairy tales for children are one thing, but teaching those fairy tales to broad, huge numbers of adults, now boy, that's where I draw a hard line. Anyway, what more should we touch upon regarding this shoe on head debacle? What do you think?
Well, there is, sooner or later, there is going to be a fireside chat between Allison Tiemann, Karen Strawn, Brian Martinez, and Armored Skeptic about the whole event.
Armored Skeptic is going to get into this is the Honey Badger episode then.
Yes, it's going to be a Honey Badger radio thing, and I think that Brian Martinez and Karen and Allison are very, very diplomatic people. They're definitely the ones to handle this, because they're going to, as I understand it, they're going to have, you're going to have him on, and they're going to say, like, well, they're going to hear him out, and he does absolutely deserve to have his side heard. And they're going, it's going to be, well, do you understand maybe why people got so angry over this? And having a nice, calm discussion about this is what is needed. I think that's ultimately what has to happen. But it's unfortunate that it's unfortunate that it takes assholes like me
Yes.
to come along and kick over a business to force the nice, rational conversation to happen. But that's pretty much what I'm here for.
Okay.
That's how men's rights have been made our name.
Your mission is time honored.
And that's what we do. Is we show up and we cause trouble and we force.
Sort of not too unlike what Paul Elam does.
Yeah. And that very uncouth and uncomfortable role has to be filled by someone, because if it's not filled by someone, then
it won't happen. It just flat out will not happen.
Well, if it's just guys like Warren Farrell, who is a genius, he's a very intelligent man. He's really he's quite a wordsmith, right? And he's very, very.
He didn't get
friendly.
anywhere by being polite, and neither did anybody else.
Yeah, like he's very accommodating, he's very friendly, and he doesn't want to step on any toes. But he has done research like you wouldn't believe, right? Like he makes these points better than Karen Strawn could, better than Paul Elam could, but he doesn't get listened to because he's not an asshole, right? And so, and then when assholes like me come along, people go, "Oh, that's an asshole."
He gets called an asshole, of course.
Sorry?
He gets called an asshole.
Oh, he gets called worse things than I do. Feminists have said that he's in favor of dads raping their daughters. He gets, like, that's the thing, is that Cafe and Warren Farrell get way more abuse than I do. And people say way worse things about them.
Because they are perceived as a greater threat, I think, Nick.
And because, well, they're perceived as a greater threat, and because they haven't made it clear that that this sort of thing doesn't work on them, right? If you show people that it's important to you to be taken seriously as someone who is reasonable, feminists are trained to exploit that to the hilt.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important that we have people like Cafe and we have people like Warren Farrell, but it's also important that you have people like me, who or people like Milo Yiannopoulos, you know, my slut walk video from 2014 or 2014, it still gets it gets seen on average about 1,000 times a day, and recently it's been getting spikes up to like 3,000, 4,000.
What's the total number of view counts? Wasn't it like 300,000?
No, it's more like 212,000.
Okay.
Or 213,000 at this point. And I'll get some people coming along. Like some people will make constructive criticism, but other people will come along and be like, "Why are you so mean to those people? That girl seemed like she was interested in listening to what you had to say." And I've just taken to going nigger, 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 nigger when they do that, and it's rude and it's gross. But that's the point. It shows them that I don't care, right? If you try to engage them reasonably and you want to say, please listen to what I have to say, they will see that as an opportunity. They will see that as a foothold or as a handlebar to grab you and jerk you around until you are in line with them. Because you want to be seen as reasonable.
The table is tipped in their favor anytime you try to be reasonable and polite and civilized.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to break almost to make eggs. Sometimes you got to be rude. I mean, we cannot banish rudeness from the world, and thank heavens for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And feminists would if they could. They would.
If they could, and they would pull us down into a hell world like you can't imagine.
Yeah, it would be Orwell's nightmare.
And it would explode, and then things would get really, really, really fucking rude.
Yeah.
Trying to outlaw anger, negative feeling, all of these things, all of them are part of being human, of being authentically human. And to try to ban these things out of existence or wish them out of existence by some combination of bromide, do-gooder, pabulum, doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to let people sometimes be angry, sometimes be rude. I mean, if somebody's stepping on your foot, please, sir, would you not step on my foot? I mean, okay, ideally, but what if he keeps stepping on your foot? What if he's stomping on your foot? And then you say, hey, motherfucker, get off my foot. That's how you got to do it.
Yeah. Hey guys, I know you need money and everything, but this knife in my face, not really friendly. Not cool. I want to be reasonable with you. Like I need to.
This criminal justice system rigged against me because I'm male. No, that's not cool. And as long as that weapon is in my face, I'm going to be a little bit rude about it. And you should be thankful that I'm not 10 times ruder than I am. I think a lot of us are exercising incredible self-restraint in that department, or some more than others, obviously.
Or even as rude as feminists.
As rude as feminists. You know who the real role model I would hold up for everybody is? Someone who gets it right on target. You know who I'm going to say that is?
Who?
Janice Fiamengo.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Janice, if you're listening to this, Janice, you demand.
Yeah. And when I was listening to Kevin Logan on the Honey Badger Radio, and when they were talking about Janice Fiamengo being a small woman up against hundreds of people heckling her, Kevin steps in and goes, "Oh, woman, small woman. What's her being a woman got to do with anything?" And really, if we're all egalitarian and everything, but her being
politically, it's significant. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah. No, but I mean, in the context, the point that he made was superficially correct. Her being a woman really doesn't have anything to do with it. But if you've ever seen Janice Fiamengo, she is 100 pounds soaking wet. Right? She is a very small person. And, when I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'2". And when I get into altercations with people, my voice starts to shake. right? Like, and even though I'm bigger than them, I get angry, right? And Janice Fiamingo is a small person who had hundreds of people heckling her and, like shouting her down and all this stuff. Her voice didn't shake at all. She was not scared one bit. Well, I mean, she might have been scared, but she really maintained her composure. That was, I would have to say that, yeah.
I would have to say she was intellectually so sure of herself.
Yeah.
That she was able to do that.
Yeah, that's just it, is that her confidence rested in the fact that she knew exactly what she was talking about, and she was really fucking smart. Right. And I think that, yeah, like, if everyone were like Janice Fiamingo, or if more people were like Janice Fiamingo, there would be no need for people who are extreme like me, to go out there and be rude and rattle cages like that, right? Because every conversation can be handled the way it ought to be. But yeah, she is. I mean, she just, yeah, she handles it.
Janice Fiamingo hits every rhetorical discipline nail there is, just smack dead center on the head.
Yeah, yeah. And I talk with her sometimes, and she gets very depressed at the state of it. She's very.
Welcome to the club, Janice. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, yeah. When she like, she said that she lost some friends over the whole Bill Cosby thing, right? Like, but I mean that. Yeah, they're giving too much up. But yeah, it's frustrating for someone like her to live in the times that we do. So yeah. So yeah, at this time I'll plug the Fiamingo file, which is on every Thursday. It comes out every Thursday on Studio Brule. And yeah, you're absolutely right. She's an excellent role model. But it is 6:13. Do you have any news items to get to?
It is 6:13 your time. Okay. I don't know if you call them news items. I had a few things lined up here. Do you recall that thing that we did, maybe 20 episodes ago, about the guy, the male feminist social justice guy, Emmett Renson was his name, the journalist, and he went out and interviewed. He found some men's rights guy by the name of Jeff, and he hung out with him and interviewed him, and it was in Chicago. And he wrote a really long article. Remember that one, Nick?
Oh yeah, and yeah, that was when a whole bunch of articles in the newspaper came out at once.
Nick, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last two sentences there. Could you repeat that?
That was when like a whole bunch, or a few articles on the men's rights movement all came out at once.
Yeah, as if on cue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember being kind of impressed by that. I mean, not intellectually impressed, but impressed by the force of it. Impressed as you would be impressed at a boxer swinging a heavy punch. That kind of impressed. With the remove of several months, looking back on it, I'm not so impressed with it anymore. I mean, I have become inwardly more strong and more resolved to the point where I look at that and I say, meh. Now, I had that on my queue list, that article. I was so good, and we hardly did it justice the first time we did it. And I was going to, devote a good part of this episode to just going over that thing again. I don't think we're going to do it justice here in the 45 minutes we have left, so I think I'm going to skip over that probably totally. I do have something else here. Everybody look at cue number 3. Cue number 3, that is a link to thefrisky.com. And, well, thefrisky.com is a website pretty much slanted toward, urban, professional, lightweight, kind of fluffy women who have a feminist leaning, okay? I mean, the kind of woman who would read, say, Cosmo or something, might have the Frisky in her bookmarks. That's the kind of place the Frisky is. But, you know, they've got most of the radical feminist ideas packed into their columns, you know, in a light and fun and fluffy way. All the cliches and tropes about, you know, male privilege and patriarchy and so on. I mean, it's all pretty much in there. But this link, Q number 3, I'm going to pull that up in my browser. Okay, yes, this one really caught my eye. It is a sign of the times. It is indicative. If anything could be said to be indicative, boy, this is it. The soapbox. If Meryl Streep isn't a feminist, fine. I'm not either. This is what the frisky columnist is saying. She's declaring herself, let's just take a minute to digest this before we jump into the article. She is declaring herself not a feminist by virtue of the fact that Meryl Streep, the famous illustrious actress, is not a feminist, or has declared herself not a feminist. This shows the power of icons and celebrities in the culture. And Meryl Streep is definitely an icon or a celebrity if anybody ever was. Now let's dive into the article here. When asked if she was a feminist, Meryl Streep responded, "I am a humanist. I am for nice, easy balance." Oh Lord, here comes the internet masses sniffing for humanist, not feminist blood. Okay, so far, this is pointing in an interesting direction. This is coming from a columnist for the Frisky. Let's go on with this. And they quote from the Mary Sue. I get younger actresses with less context about the feminist movement needing to be educated about what the word actually means and what it doesn't mean. Listen, once and for all, just because the word feminist starts with fem doesn't mean it's about prioritizing women over men. Yes, it is. If the word started with hum, I might go along with that. No, I mean, the fem is there for a reason. Okay, go on. And they're quoting some feminist here. Okay, it says, it means, hey, this is where the imbalance is. This is the part we need to lift up in order to make things equal. Okay, stop right there. This is a stock classic response that you get from a lot of feminists when you point out the inherent sort of bias in the word feminist. You know, it's about equality. Then you could just as well call it, rather than feminism, you could just as well call it masculism, and say that is about equality. So the word feminism is loaded, and I am at least thankful to these feminists who take this line of talk that they have admitted that the word is loaded. It's already preloaded with feminist ideological presuppositions. And this is where I, as a non-feminist, or anybody as a non-feminist, can step right in and say, hold on, not so fast there, just a moment. I'm not a feminist, and I don't necessarily agree that there is this imbalance. That's where I see a problem. I find this problematic on a number of levels, and we need to stop the conversation right here until we have another conversation, a very different conversation, to straighten certain things out. But of course, your typical feminist doesn't want to have that other radically different conversation. That your typical feminist just wants to gloss over that little classic feminist talking point there. Well, feminism just corrects the current imbalance. Men and women are not equal, so in order to make things equal, we have to put the accent on the fem, and then things are going to be equal. And then at some point, I guess theoretically down the road, when everything gets all nice and equaled up, then we won't need feminism anymore. But of course, we all know that that is a scam. That we're being, they're shucking and jiving us with that one. That day, that ideal day, end of the rainbow day, it's never going to come. Feminism is going to keep going and going and going, and wreaking more rack and ruin upon the world until finally somebody gets hip to what's happening and says, okay, enough, stop this, wreck this if necessary. All right. Hey, this is where the imbalance is. This is the part we need to lift up in order to make things equal. It's about bringing women up to where men already are, not lowering men in any way. Get it through your thick skulls, people. I would say the thick skulls belong to the feminists rather than to the non-feminists. We've had feminist preaching for half a century now. We've heard them pounding the same old nails over and over and over again, even though they pounded them all away. It's about time we had non-feminist voices speaking up from within the non-feminist worldview or views. Okay, that was a quote from the Mary Sue. Now the frisky columnist goes on and says, yeah, get it through your thick skull, growing 66-year-old, very intelligent Oscar-winning actress Meryl Streep. And yeah, God, younger actresses are so stupid. That all sounds very feminist. And now the columnist quotes from Jezebel. In early September, Streep sent a package to each member of Congress urging him or her to support the Equal Rights Amendment, which would make it illegal to discriminate against women. She whooped when Patricia Arquette spoke about equal pay at the Oscars. She went to Vassar, which is basically just a women's rights propaganda training center. But for some reason, she doesn't feel comfortable calling herself a feminist. Ha 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 ha. What are the right words anyway? Or, well, no, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. Ha 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 ha. What are words anyway? Right? And the columnist goes on, yeah, because Meryl Streep obviously doesn't know words and can't find the right one to describe herself without the help of bloggers who don't know her. And once again, the being patronizing, here's the Daily Beast. Protestations about feminism as being too separatist, as Cotillard puts it, are no surprise coming from young starlets who have yet to get curious about the world beyond their success. But coming from women like Streep and Cotillard, the usual refrains about wanting balance and not wanting to cut men out are confusing. These are women whose careers and whose lives have clearly benefited from feminism and who clearly seek out extraordinary women to portray in their work. Columnist goes on, I should probably take the opportunity to admit this. I was once a feminist. That's right. The frisky writer columnist is saying she was once a feminist, meaning she no longer is. I decided a few months ago that I'm not a feminist anymore. And it's largely language like this that informed that decision. According to the feminist internet, if you believe in equal rights, you are a feminist whether you want to be or not, which is profoundly hypocritical for a movement that is supposed to be empowering women to make autonomous decisions about who they are and what they believe. To then assume that anyone who doesn't know that feminism and equal rights are one and the same is just not well enough informed is pompous and condescending well beyond hypocrisy. The feminist internet tends to imply that feminism is just a set of beliefs, not a way of behaving or a set of tactics. And so, if you just share those beliefs, you must be a feminist. But no, feminism is also a way of behaving, a way of living, and a set of tactics, all of which have been in a state of flux and change since the very beginning of first-wave feminism. This is true for any ideology or religion. If you want change, you can't just have beliefs. The point is that you also act on them. That is why Gandhi fasted and Martin Luther King Jr. engaged in nonviolence. So what are the behaviors and tactics of modern feminism? There are many things, and many of them are positive and productive, like aiming toward equitable personal relationships. That's an area where feminists have no right to be going, the personal rather than the political. Okay, and working to achieve wage equality, providing safe online and physical spaces for open conversations about queer and gender theory that would have been unsafe to hold in the past, among many more. But two, there's this feminist bullying and dogpiling that happens whenever a celebrity, or worse, just an anonymous ordinary woman says, "I'm not a feminist." There's white feminist erasure of women of color. There's feminist condescension towards sex workers and kink. There's cis, straight feminist erasure of queer and trans people. And there's the fact that feminists keep saying that, sorry, no, men and their problems are not worth their time. Take, for example, the Daily Beast article above, which says, just thinking about the issue from a practical level, the idea that we should be worried about preserving men's voices in the case of a feminist victory is absurd. Whoa, wait a minute. Preserving men's voices in the case of a feminist victory. Now, if by feminist victory they mean ultimate triumph of feminism, does this person mean to be saying that men's voices will be silenced in the future feminist world that they hope to bring about? Now that's concerning. Sorry, what? Later, the claim is made that this doesn't mean that we can't love men, that we can't fight for the things men are denied by the rigid system of gender that we've constructed for them. I wonder which we this refers to. The rigid system of gender that we've constructed for them. We have constructed for them. I don't know who we is there. Okay, but when does that actually happen? When do feminists turn to misogynists and see their misogyny as the result of a gender binary that forces men to defend their masculinity, regardless of the power structures they are privileged to have that help them mount that defense? When do feminists actually try to empathize with misogynists as human beings instead of dismissing them as simply not correct and simply not important to listen to? And when do the subject of boys' declining academic performance, circumcision, male body image, sexual pressure on boys and men, economic pressure on men, the massive male prison population, and especially the massive black male prison population, the silencing of male rape victims, violence against trans men, when do these issues ever seriously get brought to the table in a mainstream feminism that keeps claiming that feminism isn't, quote, just about women? And how does mainstream modern feminism reconcile that neglect with its claims to be trans-supportive and intersectional? I ask because I've sat at that table, and I know that there are plenty of feminists who are serious about addressing the needs of people of color, the trans community, the queer community, and men. But feminism has become mainstream. Bingo. There you go. And I would add hegemonic. Okay, feminism has become mainstream. It has become very large, and those conversations are more often than not lost, ignored, or deemed not important in comparison to conversations about struggles that cis, straight, white women face primarily. Like being called bossy, maybe? All that I have to say about feminism is informed by my own poor feminist decision-making in the past. For example, I got accolades for a satirical photo set I did that made biting really kind... I got accolades for a satirical photo set I did that made biting really kind of mean judgments about the women who engage in Women Against Feminism. Oh boy, she's apologizing. This is a woman who has renounced, who writes for the Frisky, has renounced feminism, and now she's apologizing to Women Against Feminism. Is this a sign of the times or what? I've learned since then that making judgments about other people and purporting to know what other people's experiences and motivations are is wrong-headed and unkind. I regret that photo set. I regret a lot of things I've said in the name of feminism, in the name of equal rights. Hey, chew on this for a minute. I've learned since then that making judgments about other people and purporting to know what other people's experiences and motivations are is wrong-headed. Does this sound familiar to anybody? To know what other people's experiences and motivations are? Yeah, that ought to sound familiar. But it's what modern feminism does, and you hear it in the cries of, "You're so stupid for not understanding what feminism is. It's so dumb that you don't call yourself a feminist even though you believe in equal rights." It's possible to believe in equal rights and not be a feminist. It's possible to believe in equal rights and not want to associate with people who behave the way so many modern feminists do on behalf of their feminism. For myself, I've opted to say that I believe in human rights, and of course that includes women's rights. If Meryl Streep's way of saying that if Meryl Streep's way of saying that is that she's a humanist, then fine. Let her decide for herself that she's a humanist. End of article. And a whole lot of comments. I recommend you go read the article, go look through the comments. Nick, anything you want to say about this?
Well, it is heartening to see someone, dropping out of the feminist label. It seems like someone is waking up. I don't really have much to say on that.
Yeah, well, I think that is the main thing that needs to be said. The main takeaway point from this is that we see people who are standing up and saying, "I am not a feminist." Okay, now we could look at this particular writer. Her name is Rebecca Vipond Brink. Rebecca Vipond Brink. Now we could, dig through this. We could question what her motivations are. We could question which direction her politics is ultimately leading in. But the fact, just the bare, plain, simple fact that here is a person, a woman, writing for a publication like The Frisky, for crying out loud, is coming out, putting it on the public record, on the table, that she's not a feminist, that she has renounced feminism, and making a lot of the same points that Nick, people like you and I have been making for years. The times, they are changing. I see all of these factors coming together, and I read a lot of significance into this particular article. That's why I'm sharing it. This is the kind of thing you got to look for. People standing up publicly and saying, "That's it, I'm not a feminist." Their reasons for not being a feminist may be varied, extremely varied, but the fact that they're just saying it. We need to get more and more people saying, "I'm not a feminist," and the next step will be to work out our differences and decide in a consensual way what we mean when we say we're not a feminist, because they don't all mean the same thing when they say that. But for now, just for starters, it's good to hear people saying, "I am not a feminist," never mind what their reasons are. But just the fact that they're saying it, they're willing to come out and say it, and the more people that there are in the world who are willing to come out and make that statement, "I am not a feminist," the easier it becomes for successively more and more people to come out and say the same thing again, and then the snowball gets to rolling. And do I want to silence feminists? Not necessarily, but I think this might have a silencing effect in the long run. I mean, really, how much longer do we have to sit around in this world and listen to their drivel and never challenge it, and in the knowledge that what they're saying is swaying, is influencing weak and gullible minds and warping public policy and getting laws passed and so on and so on. I mean, do we want to silence that? Well, no, we just want an equal voice. And rather than us silencing them, I kind of like the idea that they will silence themselves, that they will slink away in shame with their tail between their legs and shut the fuck up. Not because we made them shut the fuck up, but because they hit their own kill switch. Because they shut the fuck up. Because it just was not to their advantage to keep talking anymore. So I'd like to see feminism slink away into a corner somewhere and be socially quarantined. I want to see feminism cease to be hegemonic. And I think the path toward bringing that happy day into reality is to get more and more people talking about feminism in the public square. And significantly, this article, this column here is called The Soapbox. Okay, it's got a megaphone icon with the word The Soapbox up there. So this is very much, the imagery here is of a speaker standing on a soapbox in a literal public square somewhere and making their voice heard to all and sundry, all the passerbys in that public square on their soapbox. This is what I like seeing. All right. And if I were to interview Rebecca Vipon-Brink, I might find that I disagree with her about a lot of things, even most things. But the fact that she is willing to make this simple statement, I am not a feminist, just that statement will encourage more and more people to come out and make that statement. And this will instill in everybody, everywhere, the idea that feminism can be stood up to, that feminism is not the only game in town, that feminism is not all of reality. It's just an interpretation of reality, and that there are other ways of looking at reality other than through the lens that feminism provides. So, this makes me cautiously optimistic. Nick, anything more you want to add?
No, I think you covered it all.
Well,
Sorry.
thank you. Well, we've got about 20 minutes left. We might make this a little shorter than the allotted 2 hours, but I'm going to turn briefly to that article on Vox.com. And don't let the word Vox fool you. Don't confuse the word Vox with Vox Day.
Actually, Vox Day just came out with a book that I really want to buy called SJWs Always Lie, and the foreword...
Oh, they do.
The foreword is written by Milo Yiannopoulos.
That sounds like an interesting book. I've heard about that somewhere, too.
Yeah, it's all about how to survive the social justice warrior onslaught when they try to destroy your reputation. In Vox Day, actually, from what I like, just from looking at this, is someone I want to learn more about. He says
he's been around. He's been around for a long time.
Yeah, he says there's 3 R's when dealing with a social justice warrior life destroying campaign. That's realize that it's happening, remain calm, and remember that nobody cares.
The last R is what intrigues me here. What does he mean by remember that nobody cares?
That when social justice warriors whip up an online hate mob against you, typically nobody else cares. They make it seem like it's the whole world against you. They're very skilled at that.
Okay, nobody else cares, meaning they're not the world.
Yeah. So yeah, if I heard a bunch of fucked up shit about Fox Day, but he's someone that I would like to learn more about myself. Actually. I'd like to read that book before I make any sort of final judgment on it.
Okay, well, anyway, this is Vox.com. I just wanted to put in there briefly that it's, lest anybody confuse it with Vox Day, this has nothing to do with Vox Day. this is, if anything, a social justice warrior publication. The title, "The Internet is Full of Men Who Hate Feminism. Here's What They're Like in Person," by Emmett Renson on August 18th, 2015. Boy, that was more recent than it seems to me. That was like 6 months ago, but no, that's not 6 months ago. My sense of time is warped here. So the internet is full of men who hate feminism. Here's what they're like in person. Well, look at the title. Look at the title of this thing. I mean, there is an agenda right there from the get-go. The internet is full of men who hate feminism. Well, the world is full of people who hate feminism, and their numbers are growing. It's like the author is in denial here. You know, you hear people say things about the internet all the time. You know, the internet, or the internet phenomenon of this, or the online phenomenon of that. It's like saying they saw something on television. It's like it has no connection with the real world, and that's why I say it's like they're in denial. They want to see the internet as just some completely abstracted mythical realm, and as long as something is just happening on the quote-unquote internet, it has no real significance. It's dismissive, all right, in addition to being denialism. So he says the internet is full of men who hate feminism. And yeah, there's a lot of men who hate feminism on the internet, active on the internet. Case in point being myself. I'm one of those men. I am on the internet right now as I speak. And he goes on to say, here's what they're like in person. Now, wait a minute. Hold on, Emmett. By the way, does anybody know that the word Emmett is a kind of an old-fangled, kind of antique word meaning ant? Emmett equals ant. So this ant-like person, Emmett Renson. Okay, here's what they're like in person. Well, Emmett Renson didn't talk to me. Emmett Renson never talked to me. If Emmett Renson hears this, if Emmett Renson wants to talk to me and write another article, all he's got to do is get a hold of me. Vanguard Report at USA.com. Emmett Renson, get a hold of me. We'll talk, and I'll give you some grist for another article. Because the one you wrote really sucks. The one you wrote is a pack of lies. The one you wrote is nothing but promoting a narrative. You wrote something for the benefit of your readers, telling your market, your readership, just the kind of stuff they wanted to hear. And I'm not going to go down through the article here and talk about it. We're out of time. It's a long article, but I just wanted to point to it. The internet is full of men who hate feminism. Yes, there's a lot of men online active on the internet who hate feminism. Those men also walk around in the real world in physical bodies. Don't forget that. Here's what they're like in person. And we don't know if this Jeff person that he talked to was a real person or not. Did he make Jeff up? Did he cobble Jeff together in his imagination by conflating or compositing a bunch of different people in different places and created, they stitched together Frankenstein dummy out of straw? I don't know. But no, I don't think Emmett Renson ever spoke to somebody like me. And if he did, I would sit him down at a table in some quiet pub somewhere, and I would have an MP3 recorder sitting on the table running the whole time. I would give Emmett 2 hours to say whatever he wanted to say, and for me to say whatever I needed to say. We would both have 2 hours, and that's it. Here, for this article, he went and socialized with the guy. If Jeff was a real person, boy, Jeff was a real greenhorn. You know, you don't go out and have friendly social evenings with people like this. When you talk to people like that, you got to be, you got to be pretty harsh and stern and keep it to business. Don't talk about your personal feelings about issues. You got to realize that those people are setting you up, and they're going to take anything you say and they're going to twist it, and they're going to manufacture something to suit their view of the world and the view of the world that they share with their readers. They are using you to advance their political gain. They will not represent you correctly. And this person that he met, this Jeff, it's just Jeff talking. I'm not Jeff. Nick, you're not Jeff. James, you're not Jeff. Anyhow, Emmett Renson, it's Vanguard Report at USA.com. I'm the one who picks up the email there. Just say, hey, Fiedelbogen, let's talk. And I'll talk and I'll tell you some things. Then you can write a second article if you want. Okay? It's just an offer. I'm just making it. I don't even know if you're going to hear this or not. But you never know. So I'm just tossing this out into the wind. Yeah, we'll see what happens. And we've got about 12 minutes to go, but I think I'm going to wind it down now. Nick, anything you want to say before we hit the brick wall of death?
Yeah, Dean Esme was recently made. What is it?
NCFM.
Yeah, the NCFM Director of Online Activism.
He sent me a Skype message about that.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So congratulations, Dean.
Congratulations, Dean. Bon voyage on your new journey, Dean.
And Cassie J has released, while you were talking there, I was just kind of going over all my social media. Sorry.
The trailer.
I see that Cassie J has, she's released a longer, what have I got here?
Longer?
She's released, a little couple days ago, she released
the trailer?
Trailer for the Red Pill movie, which I thought I was kind of worried was actually never going to come out.
I saw the trailer and I liked it.
Yeah. Apparently,
I thought Paul Elam's talking like the voice of God there was rather effective.
Apparently, she's released she's released an even longer sneak peek trailer.
Oh,
so I want to look at that.
Yeah, I got to see that too.
There's a picture of me in the in the shot that she used in the Facebook promo. So I'm a raging narcissist. So I want to see that. But aside from that, I'm Nick Redding.
Hold on, Nick, go on talking. I'm hearing a knock at my door. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay. Well, as usual, I'm Nick Redding with Men's Rights Advocacy, and I would encourage, I do all the crazy stuff that I do because I want, I want people to know who I am and what city I live in, and I'm down to hang out with any like-minded.
Those were probably the feminist police.
And like-minded individuals.
Hello, I'm back now. Somebody was looking for Cindy. Thought Cindy lived here. Okay. Anyway, all right.
Feminist police.
That's your club name, isn't it?
Anyway, Nick, what were you saying?
First of all, I thought Cindy was your club name.
No, some stranger, some woman I've never seen in my life knocked on my door and apparently thought this was where Cindy lived.
Yeah.
Okay, I sent her on her way. Anyway.
I was joking, but
okay.
I was just giving my usual bow out, my usual ritualistic, letting everyone know who I am and what I do and where I live. I live in Edmonton, Alberta. I have my YouTube channel, Men's Rights Edmonton, and my Twitter account, Men's Rights Ed. And if anybody knows anybody who sympathizes with me politically and socially, you can get a hold of me through my email address, mensrightsedmonton@gmail.com.
All right. That's it. mensrightsedmonton@gmail.com. That's where you get a hold of Nick. You can also get a hold of the Vanguard Report at vanguardreport@usa.com. Come on, Emmett Renson. I want to hear from you. We need to have a nice little heart-to-heart talk about the non-feminist revolution. And with that, let's wind it down. Everybody, remember, never forget, feminism is what we say it is. Feminism has had its turn to say what feminism is, and we've heard enough. We have an ear and eye problem. We hear what feminism is, but we also see what feminism is, and our hearing and our seeing just don't line up with each other. Unfortunately, they are wildly out of sync with each other. So it's our turn to say what feminism is. And feminists don't feed us that crap about the dictionary definition anymore. That's getting really, really old. We got to give that a break. So everybody, feminism is what we say it is. Let non-feminist voices be heard in the world. It's the dawning of a new day. Feminism is what we say it is. This has been the Vanguard Report, episode number 66. I'm still on the air. I will see you again next week for episode number 67. Wow, we've done a lot of episodes. Feminism is what we say it is. Everybody, be excellent to each other. Take it easy. See you again next week for episode 67. Ciao.